Jeff, good to be together again. There's a lot of talk, and actually, I was on a thread earlier this week, and a buddy of mine posted this about the 4-day work week. There's a lot of talk about, should we shift to the 4-day work week? And I think there's some pros and cons, and I think there's some in between. So I'm interested in your take on this one. Where do you think is the perfect work week balance?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was funny because I saw like a meme recently that was joking about, like European folks out of office reply saying like, "Hey, I'm out of the office for the summer. I'll be back in September." And then I think the joke was like an American one is like, "Hey, I'm out of the office getting, surgery, but call me on my cell if you need me." It's kind of a joke, right? Because even when you're getting surgery, the American mindset is kind of to always be working, right? Capitalism and all this stuff. So I do think there's some truth behind that we do kind of exhaust ourselves a little bit, that we do work fairly hard. I think mental health is something that's become less stigmatized these days, which I think helps proponents of the 4-day work week. I just wonder, I guess, logistically or just like in practice, would it actually accomplish what it seeks to accomplish? Because you've got people that I think are busybodies who are anxious people and they're trying to fit in as much as they can. And so if you move them from 5 days to 4, do they actually catch a break, or are they just cramming more and more into those other days and just becoming really unavailable entirely to their family on those days? And honestly, even kind of trying to sneak in work on the Friday or whatever. And then for the folks who are maybe on the opposite side of that spectrum, who are maybe less productive, are you kind of in a way creating an out for people who don't necessarily need it, right? I guess I would see it as beneficial really for everyone else in between. And without, I guess it's hard to really quantify how many people fall into those different categories. For me personally, I think I'm more of like a busybody guy. So I like the 5-day work week because I think that if there was an extra day off, I would probably be thinking about how I could leverage it into helping myself succeed. But yeah, I guess my mind's not entirely made up, to be perfectly honest. Those are my thoughts. What do you think, Carson?
I really appreciate that, and I think it's great too that you're open to the different possibilities. I think it's really challenging, Jeff, anytime that you make a broad stroke to apply to a large group of people, and many reasons for the very reasons that you highlighted. I've worked in environments years ago when I was first starting out in sales where I had to work 6 days a week. I had an environment later where I had to work 7 days a week. It was just that it was the expectation. And I agree with you. I think we've changed a lot as a society where we recognize some of the need to avoid or address burnout. And I think it's very real, specifically in certain industries. I work very closely with the healthcare provider today, and burnout's a very real thing. We've got to make sure we're attuning to where there is a need to address those types of elements. But if you make a broad stroke, as you indicated, you're looking at especially some of the less productive people and curbing work that they are expected to do in 5 now to 4. It can be quite challenging. I do find a lot of interest when I read the studies of how organizations that have enhanced the vacation to make it unlimited often find themselves to be very productive because it gives that flexibility of being able to take time when you need it and want it. And often people take less vacation because they're not forced to take it in order to prevent losing it. Look, I'm the last person to tell people how to find work-life balance because I know that I work a lot, but I also would fit in the same camp as you. If there was a shift to 4 days, I wouldn't confine my work to 4. In fact, I often find it very challenging, especially after a holiday, which, don't get me wrong, I enjoy taking the extra day. But when you come back, you've always got to cram 5 days, if not more days of work into those remaining 4. And so it can be quite challenging. And so that's why I think it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. If it's a smaller organization, it makes sense to pursue 4 days for the entire org or for certain teams. Maybe that's worth looking into and running some pilots, but you've got to be very careful because from a culture perspective at that organization, if you empower certain teams to do certain things and you exclude others, that's where you run into trouble. So I think the key element is making sure that the amount of work and the responsibilities and what needs to transpire is made clear, and the time that you're given in order to do that is more flexible. So rather than saying you work 4 days this week, it's, hey, these are your responsibilities this week. These are the things that I need to make sure that you get done. These are mission critical. These are the non-negotiables. And if I finish that in 4 days, great. Maybe I'll take a day off from that. But I think that's where it's more key that we as leaders, or that we as sellers, or we as employees are more in tune and aligned with what our real priorities are, so that we can work accordingly and work flexibly and work where we want to work, where we need to work, where is going to be most conducive for that work. I think that's the right balance. Because again, I highly doubt that even in a 5-day work week, all of us are working the same intensity, the same number of hours in that time. So if you're looking to curb that to 4, you're shifting that pendulum pretty substantially. So great thought process.
I agree. Yeah. And I've always appreciated work environments where there's just sort of level of autonomy and trust, and the leadership, just as long as you're getting what you get done. And that's how I lead too. Like, I don't care where you are, how many hours you're doing. So are you getting the results? Are you getting the job done? How many days you're taking to do it, or when you're doing it seems to matter very little as long as you're productive, right? So I very much admire and appreciate that approach.
Yeah, I think the key as a leader is empower your team to be able to work with you to construct what the work should look like. And again, if you're able to get it achieved, and you have some time to be flexible, sometimes that can even happen in the day. You finish everything you need to achieve by 11 o'clock or noon, and you maybe take a pause, take a break. Those things can happen in the moment. I do think we need to be flexible as a workforce, and we also need to make sure that we are in lockstep and aligned from a leadership to an employee perspective, to ensure that we're on the same page, that we are empowering and trusting and building that level of that foundation of trust. Because if that exists, and I know that my team is doing what they're supposed to be doing, I don't care when they do it.
Yeah, agree 100%.
Good stuff.